Hello, and welcome to Mythic Mundi. In the vast chronicle of history, few names echo with such power as Spartacus. His is not just a story of history, it is a story that has become legend. He was a man who rose from the lowest possible station in the most powerful empire the world had ever known, and for 2 terrifying years he held that empire in the palm of his hand. But who was the man behind the myth? Was he a freedom fighter, a brilliant general, or simply a desperate man who ignited a fire he couldn't control? Today, we journey back to the Roman Republic in its most tumultuous hour. This is not just a tale of arenas and armies. It is the story of an idea, the idea of freedom, and the astounding lengths one man would go to reclaim it. This is the story of Spartacus. To understand the fire, we must first understand the forge. The Roman Republic in the 1st century BC was a civilization of staggering contrasts. It was a beacon of law, architecture, and philosophy, but it was built upon a foundation of human bondage. Slavery was the engine of Rome. It is estimated that nearly a third of Italy's population was enslaved. They were not seen as people, but as instrumentum vocale, tools with voices. They worked the vast farms or latifundia, toiled in the mines, and served in the homes of the wealthy. And for some, the most unforgiving fate of all awaited: the arena. This is where our story begins, not with a hero, but with a captive. The historical record on the early life of Spartacus is thin, wrapped in the fog of Roman accounts. What we know comes from his enemies. The historians Plutarch and Appian tell us he was a Thracian, hailing from a region in the modern-day Balkans. He was, they say, a man of great courage and strength, possessing an intelligence and refinement more Hellenic than Thracian. Perhaps he had been a soldier, an auxiliary in the Roman army who deserted, or perhaps a captured warrior from a resistant tribe. Whatever his past, his future was sealed. He was sold, his identity erased, and he was transported to Capua, to the Ludus, a gladiatorial training school owned by a man named Lentulus Batiatus. Life in the Ludus was a grim paradox. Gladiators were the lowest of the low, property to be disposed of in the sand for entertainment. Yet the successful few were superstars, idolized by the crowds. Their life was one of relentless, harsh training. They were fed a specific diet to build muscle and fat, a layer that would make for a more spectacular, but less immediately fatal show. They were trained to face their end with dignity, to offer a good show to the masses. Every day was a reminder that their lives were not their own. Spartacus, designated as a Thracian-style fighter, would have trained with a small, round shield and a curved sword called a sica. He was being sculpted into a performer for the arena. But within this man from Thrace, something different simmered. It was not the acceptance of his fate, but the burning desire to defy it. The plan, according to the sources, was born in the stifling air of the Ludus. In 73 BC, Spartacus and around 70 other gladiators conspired to make a desperate bid for freedom. Their plot was discovered, but in a moment of pure chaos, they chose to act rather than wait for punishment. It wasn't a grand battle. It was a messy, desperate kitchen revolt. They armed themselves with whatever they could find: cleavers, knives, and roasting spits. They fought their way past the guards, seizing a wagon loaded with gladiatorial weapons and armor. They were out. They were free. But they were also fugitives in the heart of Roman territory. The small band fled to the most defensible position they could find, the dormant crater of Mount Vesuvius, overlooking the Bay of Naples. Rome, at first, was not alarmed. This was seen as a minor problem, a brief lapse in security. They dispatched a praetor, Gaius Claudius Gladiator, with a militia of about 3,000 men. These were not seasoned legionaries. Rome's best armies were away, fighting in Spain and against Mithridates in the east. Glaber didn't even bother with a direct assault. He saw the rebels trapped on the mountain with only one narrow path down. He simply blocked that path, setting up camp at the base. His plan was simple: wait. He would starve them out. But Glaber had tragically underestimated his opponent. He was facing a desperate garrison. Spartacus was commanding a budding army. What happened next became the first chapter of Spartacus's legend as a military tactician. The slopes of Vesuvius were covered in wild vines. Spartacus ordered his men to harvest them and weave them into long, sturdy ladders. Under the cover of night, while the Roman sentries watched the only known path, Spartacus and his men descended. They used the ladders to rappel down a sheer cliff face on the other side of the mountain. Once at the bottom, they quietly circled around Glaber's camp. The Romans, blissfully unaware, were asleep, with no proper fortifications. The attack was sudden, swift, and completely devastating. The rebels fell upon the militia, scattering them in a panic. Glaber's camp was overrun. The rebels who had escaped with kitchen knives were now fully armed with Roman military equipment. The victory at Vesuvius was more than just a battle. It was a signal. The news spread like wildfire through the plantations and villas of Campania. The tools with voices had found their voice. Slaves from all over the region began to abandon their masters, flocking to Vesuvius. Herdsmen, rural poor, and other dispossessed freemen joined their cause. Spartacus's small band of 70 gladiators swelled first to hundreds, then to thousands. They were no longer just fugitives. They were an army, and they had just shown the world that Rome could be beaten. The victory over Glaber transformed the rebellion, but it also presented Spartacus with an almost impossible challenge. What do you do with an army of the desperate? His forces were not a disciplined military unit. They were a diverse, volatile mix of people from different lands, speaking different languages, united only by their shared past of servitude and their desire for freedom, or for some, simple revenge. Spartacus, now joined by other gladiators who became his key lieutenants, men like Crassus and Onymos, Gauls who brought their own martial prowess, began the monumental task of forging this group into a functional force. They were not just a mob, they were becoming organized. They established a base, conducted raids for supplies and weapons, and began training their new recruits in the tactics of the arena and the legion. Rome, realizing this was more than a local disturbance, responded. They sent 2 more praetors, Publius Varinius and Gaius Thracian. They too were defeated. Spartacus's forces outmaneuvered and overwhelmed them. His army was growing with every victory, their numbers swelling to a reported 70,000. They were now a moving state, a nation of the formerly enslaved, cutting a swath through the Italian countryside. The winter of 73-72 BC was spent consolidating, training, and forging weapons. They were no longer just surviving, they were preparing for a full-scale war. When spring arrived, Rome could no longer ignore the crisis. This was the Third Servile War, the largest and most dangerous slave rebellion the Republic had ever faced. The Senate, now in a state of panic, elevated the threat. They did what they did in times of ultimate crisis. They dispatched the consuls. In 72 BC, both standing consuls, Lucius Gellius Publicola and Gnaeus Cornelius Lentulus Cladonius, were sent to end the rebellion. This was the full might of Rome's domestic power. It was at this critical juncture that the rebellion faced its first and perhaps most fatal internal crisis, a division in strategy. Spartacus, according to the historian Plutarch, had a clear objective. He wanted to lead his people north, out of Italy. His goal was to cross the Alps and disperse, allowing his followers to return to their original homelands, to Thrace, to Gaul, to Germania. He wanted, quite simply, to go home. But Crassus, his Gallic lieutenant, disagreed. He and his followers, numbering around 30,000, were emboldened by their victories. They did not want to flee. They wanted to stay and plunder, to make Rome pay for its years of oppression. The allure of revenge and the wealth of the Italian heartland was too strong. The two leaders split. Crassus and his followers broke away, heading south to continue their raids. This decision proved to be a tactical catastrophe. The consul Publicola intercepted Crassus near Mount Garganus. Isolated and likely outmaneuvered by the disciplined legions, Crassus's army was comprehensively defeated. 2/3 of his men, including Crassus himself, fell in the battle. Spartacus, meanwhile, was moving north, pursued by the other consul, Lentulus. When Spartacus learned of Crassus's fate, he displayed a dark Roman-style sense of honor. He captured 300 Roman prisoners and forced them to fight to the end in pairs, a grim gladiatorial tribute to his fallen comrade. Now Spartacus was penned between two consular armies. Lentulus was behind him, and Publicola, fresh from his victory over Crassus, was moving to block his path north. The trap was set. But Spartacus was a master of the unexpected. He turned and met Lentulus head-on, defeating it. Then, with incredible speed, he force-marched his army and struck Publicola's legions, defeating them as well. In a stunning campaign, the Gladiator from Thrace had defeated both consuls of Rome in open battle. The path to the north was clear. The Senate was in disarray. Spartacus marched his army, now numbering over 100,000, to Mudina in the Po Valley, near the foothills of the Alps. There he faced another army, this one led by Gaius Cassius Longinus, the governor of Cisalpine Gaul. Once again, Spartacus was victorious. This was the moment. The Alps, the gateway to freedom, lay before them. His stated goal was within reach. And then, in the most baffling and debated decision of the entire war, Spartacus turned around. He abandoned the Alps and marched his army south, back into the heart of Italy. Why? The historians themselves are divided. Did his army, flush with victory and laden with plunder, refuse to leave the rich lands of Italy for the harsh crossing? Were they so confident that they believed they could take Rome itself? Or did Spartacus believe that a sea crossing from the south was a more viable escape? We will never know the true reason, but this decision sealed their fate. They had chosen to remain in the lion's den. The panic in Rome was absolute. The consular armies were broken. The slave army was undefeated. The capital itself felt vulnerable. The foundations of the Roman world were trembling. The Senate, desperate, knew they needed a new kind of commander. They needed someone with ice in his veins, limitless resources, and a burning ambition to restore order, no matter the cost. They found their man. His name was Marcus Licinius Crassus.
Marcus Licinius Crassus was quite simply the richest man in Rome. He had built his staggering fortune during the civil wars of Scylla, acquiring the property of prescribed citizens at bargain prices. He was not loved, but he was feared, and in this moment he was needed. Crassus was driven by a deep-seated ambition. He craved dignitas, public prestige, and more than anything, a military command to rival that of his great competitor Pompey the Great, who was busy winning victories in Spain. The war against Spartacus was seen as undignified, a servile war. But Crassus saw it as an opportunity. He volunteered for the command and was given sweeping powers. He raised 6 new legions, adding them to the battered remnants of the consular armies. He was not just a general, he was the sponsor of this new war. Crassus understood something his predecessors had not. This was not a war against a foreign king. This was a war against an idea, and it required absolute, uncompromising resolve. His first act as commander revealed his character. When his legates, Mummius, engaged Spartacus against orders and was badly beaten, Crassus reintroduced a terrifying ancient form of punishment, decimation. From the cohorts that had fled, 1 in every 10 men was chosen by lot. Their own comrades were then forced to carry out the sentence. It was a horrifyingly severe message. Crassus was teaching his men that while the enemy might defeat them, he would hold them accountable. He was instilling a terror of their own commander that was greater than their terror of the enemy. The tide of the war began to change. Spartacus, moving southward, found himself pursued by a relentless, efficient, and well-supplied army led by a commander who would not make mistakes. Spartacus's new plan was to reach the toe of Italy, at Rhegium. His plan, to cross the narrow Strait of Messina into Sicily. Sicily had been the site of 2 previous large-scale slave rebellions. He likely hoped to reignite the fires there and establish a new defensible stronghold. He supposedly struck a bargain with the Cilician pirates, the undisputed masters of the Mediterranean at the time, to transport his army across the strait. He paid them, but the pirates, perhaps fearing Roman reprisal or simply taking the payment from a desperate man, sailed away, abandoning the rebel army. Spartacus was trapped. And now Crassus executed his grand strategy. He ordered his legions to construct a monumental feat of engineering. Across the entire peninsula of Rhegium, from one sea to the other, a distance of over 30 miles, his soldiers built a wall and a deep ditch. It was a line of containment, cutting Spartacus and his entire army off from the rest of Italy. The hunter had caged his prey. As winter set in, the situation for the rebels became dire. Supplies ran out. They were trapped between Crassus's wall and the sea. Spartacus knew that to stay meant to starve. He had to break out. In the dead of a winter night, during a driving snowstorm that provided cover, Spartacus launched his escape. He had his men fill in a section of Crassus's ditch with earth, wood, and even the bodies of prisoners and animals. In a chaotic, desperate surge, a large portion of his army managed to breach the wall and escape Crassus's trap. It was a brilliant, costly success. But the army was fracturing again. Another splinter group, led by Gannicus and Castus, broke away and was soon cornered and destroyed by Crassus. Spartacus, now free but weakened, began a series of running battles, trying to find a way out, but Rome was closing in. The Senate, impatient with Crassus and still gripped by fear, had recalled Rome's other great general, Pompey, from Spain. Crassus now was in a race. He had to finish Spartacus himself, or Pompey would arrive and steal the glory. The final, decisive confrontation came in 71 BC, at the Battle of the Salarius River in Lucania. The rebel army, cornered and with nowhere left to run, turned to make their last stand. The accounts of this final battle are fragmented, but they all paint a picture of immense, desperate courage. Spartacus, knowing the end was near, is said to have his horse brought to him. He drew his sword and ended the horse's life. He reportedly said that if he won, he would have all the horses he needed, and if he lost, he would not need one. He would stand and fight on foot with his men. The battle was a terrible, protracted conflict. The rebels, who had fought for 2 years for their freedom, sold their lives dearly. Plutarch gives us the final mythic image of Spartacus. He writes that Spartacus himself tried to fight his way through the chaos, through the ranks of legionaries, directly towards Crassus. He was wounded in the leg by a spear, but sank upon his knee, holding his shield before him. He continued to fight, felling Romans around him, until he was finally overwhelmed. His body was never found. He was lost in the great press of the conflict, vanishing back into the anonymity from which he came. The Third Servile War was over. The aftermath was a grim testament to Rome's power. Crassus was merciless. He rounded up 6,000 survivors of the battle to make a final, terrifying example to every slave in the Republic. He ordered them all to be subjected to the ultimate punishment. Along the entire length of the Appian Way, the main road from Capua to Rome, 6,000 crosses were raised. It was a horrifying monument, a stark warning that this was the price of defiance. Crassus had won the war, but it was Pompey who had returned and mopped up 5,000 fugitives fleeing north who wrote to the Senate and claimed the credit for finishing the war. This rivalry would define Roman politics for decades. But while Rome celebrated its restored order, the story of Spartacus was just beginning. He had failed. He had not freed the slaves. He had not toppled the Republic. But he had done something arguably more powerful. He had proven that the system could be challenged. He, a Thracian gladiator, a piece of property, had organized an army that defeated consuls, terrified the Senate, and shook the very foundations of the Roman world. His story was suppressed by Roman historians, treated as a dark and embarrassing chapter, but it could not be erased. Through the centuries, his name became a symbol, adopted by revolutionaries, reformers, and anyone who fought against oppression. He became an icon for the idea that human dignity is worth fighting for, no matter the cost. Spartacus, the man, perished in an unknown battlefield in southern Italy. His body was lost to history. But Spartacus, the idea, the immortal rebel, was born, and that idea would never be contained. The legacy of Spartacus is a testament to the power of a single individual to inspire a timeless ideal. His story forces us to confront the most complex questions of justice, freedom, and the price of defiance. What part of his epic journey resonates most with you? And who else from the annals of history or mythology would you like us to explore? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the world of Mythic Mundi, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. It helps our community grow. Thank you for watching.